Hello and welcome to this episode of the Small Axe Radical Short Film Awards podcast. Today we have on with us Joanna Suchomska, whose film MATKA, POLKA will be screening at our festival. Joanna, welcome.
Hi, Cole.
Hello.
Thank you for having me here.
That's all right. Glad to have you here. Joanna is a Polish-born documentary filmmaker based in Brighton, UK. In her work, heavily influenced by her identity as an immigrant, she is especially devoted to the subjects of social controversy and taboo, women's issues and human rights. And so Matka Polka is Joanna's second independent documentary. She hopes her films and wants her films to evoke radical empathy, which she believes can lead to social change. Joanna, I hope we could just start by asking if you would tell us a bit about how MATKA POLKA came to be made, please.
Yes, of course. So it was twofold, really. The first experience that kind of led me onto this topic was just randomly browsing a Facebook group, a Polish Facebook group for women and women identifying people, right? Just a general chit chat, and then I came across a post about the day after pill. The day after pill is something you take when you think you may have gotten pregnant and you don't want to be pregnant. Therefore, you take this pill to stop a possible pregnancy. Easy enough, yet not in Poland. So the people on that group were discussing alternative ways of obtaining said pill, and one of the ways I remember that was being discussed was going to a vet's and getting a version of this pill that's used on animals. And that was just so bizarre. I would have never thought that someone would have to go to a vet's to access something that should be, readily accessible whenever. And so I thought, surely that can't be, it can't be the case. And by that point, I'd already been living in the UK for a number of years. And so it was, it was kind of living rent-free in my head for a while before I do something with this idea. And then, fast forward a couple of years, I found myself in a situation where I thought I may have been pregnant, the possible overshare. But anyway, I just realized that the decision was mine, what to do with this information, if it was true. I just knew that I was safe and I could make my own choice. And then I thought back to this Facebook post and just came to a crushing realization that my friends, family members, other people with uteruses in Poland are in a very, very different situation. And, I just realized with full force how privileged I am living out here and not back in my home country. So that really was what led me on to the topic of abortion and access to abortion and access to emergency contraception in Poland. And then I started digging deeper, started having conversations with women. I'm gonna be saying women for the simplicity of it. Obviously, I mean anyone with a uterus who could find themselves in that situation. I started talking with women in my country, and I decided that their voice needs to be amplified. People don't really know what's happening in a European Western country, and so that's how the documentary slowly started coming about.
So, I mean, you've briefly touched upon it, but could you sort of introduce us maybe a little bit more to the Polish context for abortion rights here?
Yeah, so for long years, I think since 1932, abortion in Poland was only legal in 3 cases. It was when a pregnancy posed a threat to the life or health of the pregnant person. That was case number 1. Case number 2, if there is a high probability of a severe impairment to the fetus. So that could result in a child being born with, severe difficulties, or even if the fetus's life was threatened. And then case number 3, if the pregnancy was a result of rape or incest or a prohibited act, right? So that was the situation for a number of years. And then in 2020, very recently, autumn 2020, the Constitutional Tribunal decided that they were going to take away case number 2. So if there is a possible fetal impairment, that's not a good enough reason to terminate one's pregnancy, which was, I can't quote the exact figure, but 90-something% of all abortions in Poland. So effectively, they almost made it like completely illegal, because it was such a big majority of all cases. And so now you can only legally terminate a pregnancy if it's a direct threat to your own life, or if it's coming from a rape or other prohibited act.
Before we move on to the next question, I was just sort of interested to know that what's the sort of the state for disability care and sort of post pregnancy support within Poland. Is there sort of like there's sort of like a state benefits situation arise like it does here in the UK?
There is, you can claim benefits. I don't know a whole lot about it, so I wouldn't want to be quoted on that in particular. I just know that it is kind of it's not that easy to secure this, and it's not like the benefits that you're getting are actually going to cover all the costs that you're going to endure. And also, money is just one side of it, isn't it? The kind of life commitment, time commitment,
exactly,
and the strain on your mental and emotional health is a completely different side to this debate. And the thing, obviously you're going to consider that if you find yourself in a situation. So therefore, I think you should just have a choice to not have to do it if you know so early on. I mean, as simple as that, really.
So we have sort of this I hesitate to say bleak, but this very unsavory atmosphere within Poland for pregnant people. But your film doesn't sort of tend towards that sort of social aspect, or that at least not on the front of it. So I was wondering sort of why you went with the choice for telling these stories in sort of atmospheric and poetic ways, as opposed to sort of showing the sort of harsh reality of it all.
Right. Well, again, a twofold reason. A big part of it, and a big part of it really was something that I had to take into account very, very early on at interview stage, which was the anonymity of my contributors. Because abortion is such a taboo topic in Poland, they fear judgment, even from their close ones. Some of the women that I interviewed, they didn't even tell about their experience. They didn't even share with their families or some of their friends, for this fear of being judged or worse. And so I knew that like their anonymity and keeping them safe was at the forefront of everything I was doing and all the decisions that I had to make. And so I knew from the get-go that I wasn't going to be able to record anyone the way we're doing now, or show anyone's face. And so I had to come up with another way of doing it. And then I think I just thought what was lacking from the kind of public debate about abortion were those very personal, raw accounts. You can show a bunch of people arguing, at the government, or you can show a street protest, and these are very important for sure to understand the whole deal. but it's really about people who are going to face those laws directly, and the results of those rulings, right? So I wanted to hear directly from them and to make it as intimate and direct as possible. And so I thought, okay, we should be focusing on their emotional states so that we can hopefully get to this radical empathy that you so nicely talked about in my intro. It was really a big part of the consideration. How do I evoke this radical empathy in the viewers? And I thought, okay, it is through understanding what these women were going through. So let's make the film feel as if they're just talking directly to you, or as if you're just overhearing someone's conversation, consensually so, but
yes,
it's like consensual eavesdropping almost. Because these are conversations that are happening behind closed doors. And so I just wanted to find the most authentic way of kind of immersing the audience in I lost my train of thought.
In their stories, yeah.
Yeah, in their stories, yeah.
So almost the sort of it. I suppose it's not dreamlike, but there's definitely a relaxed feel to the film, and so this was sort of like easing into, yeah.
It was part of it. Once I had my lovely director of photography attached. Her name is Karolina Monwita-Olechnowicz. She's very, very talented. And I was really blessed to have her on the project. We brainstormed together, and the main idea behind the visuals was how do we present visually the mental state that someone would be in if they were just sitting at the table or just crossing the street, and the memories of all the traumas they had to go through just kept coming back at them. So this was what we were trying to achieve. How do you process those memories? The film is also told from like a point in time where those events are already in the past, maybe not too far away, but they're in the past. So these individuals are now processing whatever happened to them. So how do you feel when a past trauma like that comes back to you? This was what we were trying to show, and this was the conversation that I then had with actresses. Imagine that you are in this state, and then you're taking a shower, and the memory of taking a shower a day after you had this very unpleasant interaction at your gynecologist, how do you, what happens inside your head?
So we rather well sort of segued into my next question, which is about the stories and the voices. So sure. It struck me that I believe, and forgive me if this is wrong, there was only one voice representing each and every experience. So I was wondering sort of what effect were you striving for with this, because it's sort of a rather lucid and sort of flowing sort of journey that these sort of four stories take. So what was your sort of rationale behind that decision?
Yeah, so part of this was, again, my contributor's anonymity. Once I had the interviews and I was going through them, selecting what I believed should be in the film, piecing them together, to grant them even further anonymity and make them unidentifiable even further, I took elements of stories and kind of mixed and matched them, not to the point that they wouldn't be factually correct, but say someone's account would start, and then at the halfway point, we would be hearing from someone else who had been in a similar position. So I had this free flow of stories, and I just thought, it's not really, we don't have to know, it's not really important. you know, just following one real contributor from the beginning to the end of their journey. I was about the volume of those stories, and I think what speaks more to this volume and how often it happens and how prominent it is creating that like single uniform voice. This was how this decision came about.
So it's almost you're contributing then to the same sort of idea your visuals are trying to get to, which is the inhabiting of like of space, or the inhabiting of the same mental space, because obviously it's almost you're stripped back from asking who, you know, who this is, you know, maybe what have they experienced, and you're almost forced to sort of feel rather than to question. Is it?
Exactly, yeah, and I'm so happy to hear that you
brilliant.
you got this impression. This is the biggest compliment to our team. But yes, exactly. I didn't want the viewer to think who. I wanted them to think it could be anyone. It could be me. It could be, again, someone really close to me. It could be my neighbor. It could be my cousin, my friend from high school. It could be anyone. And that's what's important about it.
So I feel, come to the end of the questions I had set out. So as we sort of wrap up, I'm just wondering, are there any sort of projects or groups or films you're working on in the near future that you'd like to tell us about?
Not at the moment. I mean, my day job, I work as a researcher, so I am always working on projects. They're not my own projects. But in terms of making independent short documentaries, I don't really have my next thing on the radar just yet. I think I want MATKA POLKA to have its festival round and kind of spend a little bit of time with this film, as it's luckily visiting several festivals. I am, however, as I think many people are in the country at the moment, interested in all the Ukrainian immigrants/refugees. I feel like the word refugees is a bit loaded, so I'm going to go with immigrants that have recently moved into Poland. It will be a big privilege to be able to do some sort of documenting of their journey. Nothing is planned yet, but if an opportunity presents itself, this is definitely a direction that I would want to go.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Joanna. And I wish you well for MATKA POLKA. I wish you well for your ideas here about Ukraine, and I wish you well for the future.
Thank you very much, Carl. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.